this are going forward with Steelcase. So you can talk to our representatives from Steelcase, or Ben Weber is here also. We've also found a really interesting thing, which is that when you look at neighborhoods and you get call records and other sorts of data about communication within neighborhoods, by looking at those same two variables, this mathematical pattern of engagement, how much the pattern of communication within our neighborhood and the pattern out, you can predict all sorts of things. So along the bottom there are those two variables, and this is socioeconomic percentile. That's a combination of a bunch of things that are almost collinear. So you can look at the pattern of phone calls and predict the death rate of babies with great accuracy. You can predict the GDP. You can predict the crime rate. You can predict life expectancy with high accuracy just by looking at the network of communication. And what that means is you can now begin design cities and networks to have low crime, to have babies that don't die, and to have high GDP. And that's, from my point of view, the genesis of a new initiative here at the lab called City Science with Kent Larson and Cesar Hidalgo, where we're taking these sorts of principles about how humans live as groups and using them to reinvent the city, to make it dramatically more healthy, dramatically more productive, dramatically more energy efficient. But it doesn't end there. You can also look at these details of networks and do things that are surprising. So for instance, we did something in the health area, which is now being picked up by MGH, where we were able to use patterns of association gotten off of cell phones to be able to get people to act more healthily. And it was 4 times more effective than anything else that they tried before. That's a huge difference, because the biggest thing in healthcare is behavior. If you can change people's behavior efficiently, regularly, you can transform that. So more recently it's been noticed that this same phenomena applies to things like taxation policy and economic regulation. And I just got invited to do a keynote for all of the ministers of finance for the EU countries to explain to them how they can redo their tax system using this principle. Now, that's pretty interesting, but you should also be really worried, because it says what sort of deep trouble they're in. Anyway, another one which is perhaps even more surprising. We looked at a community of financial traders. This is a little less than 3 million financial traders. And we looked at their pattern of communication. And what we found was a surprising pattern that actually is very much like we see in companies, like we see in communities. And now this is a virtual community. They're commuting, email, Twitter-like things. And we found that when traders were isolated from their community, they made poor decisions. And when they were in feedback loops, so there was too much feedback, they made disastrous decisions. But the interesting thing here is we can actually measure this. We can